Hello and welcome to our short Webinette on Rootstock and Salesforce Field Service Lightning. Today we're going to talk specifically about how Rootstock can help with the financial management of your field service organization. Let's get started. In talking with many of you who've got Field Service Lightning, one of the things that we hear about is companies struggle with the efficiency of their invoicing process. And that's partially because the invoicing is oftentimes done in another system like an ERP system, and the handoff from the activity and field service from work orders into ERP can be kind of cumbersome at times and sometimes manual. Invoices can be entered incorrectly, they could be delayed, and of course if that happens you're going to be delaying your cash. So we want to help you improve the overall efficiency of what you're doing, but also the cash management and making sure you're collecting all the invoices that you should be. You don't leave any out there in the field. The second thing is, if you're in charge of running a field service organization, you're most likely getting, kind of measured on the profitability and the margin contribution of what you're doing. One of the things we want to show you today is how you get a better cost visibility to what's going on at a work order level, and also more pricing flexibility to help you improve the top line as well. And these will be done inside of Field Service Lightning. As you'll see here in a minute, Rootstock is a native Salesforce application, so it's basically a portion of ERP functionality embedded inside of Field Service Lightning for you to do that. So let's take a look at how this works inside of Field Service Lightning. If you take a look at what happens in the field, work orders occur at an account and products get consumed. And from that transaction, or labor gets booked as well. From that, an invoice needs to get created. And what you're able to do with our add-in here, if you will, is with a single click, create an invoice from that work order that's been completed with the products consumed. Now that can be done by the accounting staff at the end of the day or throughout the day, or can be set up in an automated process as well, but it's up to you how you do that. But it comes directly, easily from the work order. And what's great about that, once you do it, you're going to be able to see both sides of the entry, if you will, see the pricing that you've got on it and what's going to be invoiced for, but also the cost amounts as well. So you'll be able to see literally the margin at a work order level here inside of Field Service Lightning. And what we're able to do then is basically take that transaction and push that into either Rootstock financials if you happen to be using them, or into a legacy financial application. So the receivable and the GL side of the entry. So with that, I'd like to introduce Rylene, and Rylene will take you through a little demonstration about how this works. Rylene?
Okay, thanks, Tom. So what we see here from the perspective of field service activities is a homepage. And this homepage highlights exactly what Tom was talking about when he's talking about the visibility of your sales, your cost of sales, and your margins on field service activities. What you can see here from a dashboard, this is more of a management perspective. This gives you a number of panels that talk about the margins of your work orders as you've been processing work orders, an overall margin percent across all work orders for a given time period, invoice work orders sorted rather than by work order, by account. So what kind of margins are we making on our field service activities on an account by account basis, some other statuses, what work orders are out there that have had activity created on it but have not yet been invoiced, and the invoicing status of the work orders themselves. So this is a management perspective, gives you a snapshot of exactly what's the profitability, the margin, et cetera, on your field service activity, and then open field service activity that remains to be invoiced. So from here, let's go take a look at the process of creating a work order. Now, you'll see in our menu, service appointments, work orders, product items, these are all Salesforce activities. And so a work order will get created through a number of mechanisms. It could originate at a case where a customer has called in to report a problem. The case might generate then a work order request, or there in this particular case, we're just going to manually assume that we have heard from the customer. They have a complaint about their product, and that we're going to, based on that complaint, go ahead and create a work order. So we're creating a new work order. We're telling the system what the customer's name is. We're going to go ahead and from here we could do other things as well, like describe it. So we'll say our machine is making a grinding noise. So it's got a problem. And then that's really all we need to kick off this work order. So that work order is then ready to be worked on by somebody in the field. And the people in the field are going to have inventory on their trucks typically. And so what you'll see before we go to the actual field interface, we'll just have a look at the locations here and show that, let's say our field service tech is in van 1. And we can have a look here and see all of the product items that they're carrying on their van. So, you know, these are a couple bearings and maybe some filters, et cetera, some plumbing and equipment and things on their van. So that's the inventory that they have to draw from, if you will, to service that work order. So let's go from here and let's go see what a service tech might be looking at on their handheld device. And in this case, we're going to use the phone. So now what we're looking at is the Field Service Lightning application that is deployed on the handheld device. So as you can see, there's the same level of visibility of dashboards on the handheld device as you would have on your desktop, if that's the case. Now, of course, a field service tech is not going to be looking necessarily at the margins of the activities, but they would have their own metrics that would report about service appointments, service levels, being on time, and of course the next work order or work orders that they have to work on. So you can see here, this is the list of my work orders to work on as a service tech, and at the top of the list is the order that we were just issued. So let's assume the tech arrives. On the work order itself, they would do the activities that they would do to initiate the fact that they've arrived at the account, that they are, you know, initiating work. And from there, they're going to issue materials and hours of labor and service for the work that they're performing. So our assumption is the technician gets out there, he goes ahead and he checks it out, he finds out that there's a bearing that's a problem, and so he issues the bearing. He checks his band to see if he has the bearing. So we're going to look up that bearing and see, you know, do I have a bearing on hand? I could search for items and say, show me bearing. All the bearings that we have, right? So I can search on those items. And then, or I can just pick from the list that's provided. So in this case, this is the bearing that I need to correct this problem. I'm going to issue one to the order, and I don't have to worry about price as a tech. I can put in a description of, you know, why I'm issuing that item, but I don't have to worry about any of the pricing, because the pricing is keyed into the pricing related to the customer's account, the discounts that they're entitled to, whatever contract agreements are in place. And so the tech doesn't have to worry about any kind of pricing logic. So now that I've consumed that item, then that item is going to be reflected on my list of items that I've consumed, and it's going to have relieved my inventory in my van, which we'll take a look at in a minute. So that activity can result in the field service tech actually at the end of the process. He will have put in the products that he's consumed. He can put in his service hours as items to be invoiced. And at the end of the process, the tech can either generate the invoice from here, or what sometimes happens in field service activities is at the end of the day, a job might kick off automatically when all of the techs have returned to the depot. A job could kick off and say, okay, now it's time to process the invoices and generate those invoices in an automated fashion. And those can be emailed out to the customer, etc. Or again, the tech could generate the invoice here and produce that and leave that behind with the customer as evidence of his work. And so that, again, that goes back to the idea that Tom talked about. We're speeding up the cash flow because there's no discrepancies. The customer doesn't misremember that you showed up or you didn't show up, or you did the work or you didn't. Okay, so now that we've returned to the desktop view, so there would be a activity back at the back office in this scenario that we're going through, where someone's going to generate invoices. So I'm going to do this manually for a single invoice instead of in an automated fashion and let the system, so we can go through and look at the activity that's going on. So you see, here's our work order, and this particular work order has had activity associated with it. So you can see in its chatter feed that a PC 056 was created for this work order, right? So that's a product consumed, a PC 056. We can drill down in that and see that detail, right? And see that that was a product consumed. So you can see that it was a this product number 2780T66. If we go over here and look at the Rootstock inventory by location, we can see that we have a number of these on hand, and that this is a high load bearing, et cetera, and where it's located. And here it's in the van or the vehicle one, et cetera, right? So this is all the information about that product that was consumed and all the related information about it. So if we just then go back to the work order at this point and look at the related list here, again, here's the product consumed. If we look at the details over on the right-hand side, this is where some interesting things come into play. So the first thing is, if you have generated the consumption of the product, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're ready to invoice. But once you're ready to invoice, you can also flag as to whether anything that is on the invoice itself is a warranty or not a warranty. So the warranty information is shown here. And then you'll notice here there's a flag that says that all the products consumed have been invoiced, and that's not checked at this point. So what that means is that we have to generate our invoice at this point. We're back in accounting, and we're generating the invoice now. And then once that's completed, then we'll be able to look at the profitability and the margin associated with this particular order itself. So once the invoice is processed, a couple things have happened here. So what you'll see here is there is a sales order invoice header and sales order invoice lines. And so we'll drill down on those in a minute and see that. But what you should also notice over here in the Field Service Lightning's connector area is that now all the products that have been issued or issued to that work order or consumed by that work order, and those would be service hours as well as parts and supplies consumed in the process, all those products have been consumed, have been invoiced. So you see that here by this checkbox. And then we see a total invoiced amount of $53.44 and a cost of goods of $24.43. And of course, the difference between those two is the margin. And that's the, that gives us our financial accountability reporting for the margin on these field service activities. So now let's just drill in and see the invoice itself. So you can see here the invoice data associated with the transaction. And of course, you can see that there can be additional charges layered in over top of the actual product charges. So if you have a charge for a field service call of minimum $75 for an on-site visit. All those kinds of things can be layered in. If these items are taxable, the taxing information and logic would kick in as well. And so that's the invoice itself. And then if we look at the related list here, we can just visualize the physical invoice that would be produced. So this is the PDF that got produced out of this. You can see all the related information. So the invoice number is 1343 with today's date, and it was related to this field service lightning activity of work order 59. So that's a link back to the customer's case, etc., that they can look up. You can look up who's the sold to, the shipped to, etc., all the terms, and then the product itself, that ball bearing that we issued and consumed in the work order, is shown here with its price information and the summary of the invoice information. So the customer now has that invoice physically or electronically either in their in basket, or it was a leave behind by the tech. And at this point, maybe we could wrap up by just showing the locations again, because the van has consumed that particular bearing. And if we look at the inventory left in the van, let's scroll down here, and we'll see that bearing that was the T66 that used to be a quantity of 2. Now there's only 1 on hand. And then there are appropriate inventory transactions that would happen to reduce inventory, not just in the van, but the overall inventory for this division in this company. And so that kind of concludes the activity associated with the field service activity. So let's return to the dashboards up front, and we'll be able to go in and have a look and look at the activity that was generated out of this. And what we're going to find is that if we drill down on our general equipment customer and into the report associated with them, then we'll be able to see all of our activities. And here's our work order, our field service work order number 59, and its margin percent at 54%. And then finally, I would say if we go and have a look at our customer, that we'll be able to see a 360-degree view of the customer. We'll see all this activity in the customer record. So now when we navigate to the customer, we can see the 360-degree view of the customer, which gives us all of the activities that go on with that customer, whether they're current and prior year sales, invoicing, aging, opportunities, order backlog with open and closed sales orders. And here are our manufacturing and field service work orders. And you can see here that's updated with our latest information about our work order 59 that we just completed. And that kind of wraps up the total package and view of the complete and total integration and connection of all this information inside of the ERP system, as well as in the field service lightning system. Back to you, Tom.
Great, Rylene, thank you very much. So everyone, you can see how with a click, you create that invoice. Then you get the full view of the margin of what's going on at that work order level. We didn't go into this much, but there's also quite a few pricing options and discounting options that are far and above what you probably have in field service lightning that are available to you today as well. Also wanted to let you know that there are other components you can add in here. If you happen to be an organization that does remanufacturing, where you have depot repair with a lot of labor steps and bill of materials and are really doing remanufacturing, if you will, Rootstock is a full-blown ERP system with manufacturing, so you can implement that portion if you need it as well. And if you're an organization that has very intensive supply and parts needs, you know, the old idea of right part, right place, right time. If you want to take more control over your inventory and your supply chain and how you're replenishing that inventory, you can put in Rootstock, inventory management, and supply chain as well. And of course, we also mentioned the financials too. So it's a complete system to complement Field Service Lightning to improve the financial management of your field service organization. To learn more, visit rootstock.com. We'd be happy to do a personal demo. Thank you for your time.